Welcome back, everyone. It's been a big week. We found out about 10.2.5, the first of Dragonflight's 3 final patches. Loads of 10.2 has happened, and the insane roller coaster of this expansion's quality is continuing, and we're even seeing many things that will lead us directly into the war within. And honestly, they're kinda neat, just like our sponsor. Ugreen, they're the best charging brand out there. I've been using their chargers daily for years, and hey, here I've got the Nexode RG65 and RG30, which are their 65 and 30 watt chargers. The link's down below in the description. Just look at this tiny, tiny little light package that packs a hell of a punch, and beyond just looking cute, the feet actually do make for a really nice stand for these. As an example here in the 65 watt model, this will charge your M2 MacBook Air from 0 to 51% in just 30 minutes. And of course it's got 2 USB-C outputs as well as one A, so it's going to fit all of your different cables. And hey, just look how small and packable this is. Now both of these have got the latest gallium nitride tech, which means less heat and more efficiency for their charging, plus Ugreen's thermal guard tech, which takes heat readings over 238 times a second to keep them safe. So these are fast, safe, light, ultra portable, and with just this as an example, one charger, I can charge all my devices from my work laptop to my camera, my phone, my Steam Deck. It's got it all covered. Charging is just a part of everyday life now, so why not actually charge really damn well? You can hit the link down below, and as for me, well, I'm about to head to the USA, so this is pretty much perfect timing. Thanks, Ugreen. Let's go. Let's talk about this week. So Season 3's begun, Amirdrassil is out, Mythic Plus has started, PvPers can now try the new solo queue battleground experiment, and if it goes well, we'll get solo queue RBGs in the War Within, which would be neat. As it stands though, right now it's just a pretty nice source of conquest. Mythic Plusers have also found a really lovely surprise. This portal room, which looks gorgeous. It's got each portal being surrounded by mobs from the related dungeon, as well as some thematic music. This is just a really nice quality of life improvement, and it's not just useful, but it's also flavorful, right? I just think this is really nice for Mythic Plus. I think the idea of them getting maybe a hub that could, evolve a little bit as an expansion goes on, that's really cool. Then, the remaining campaign chapters have been unlocked, the final one being gated behind defeating Farak, as well as 2 side quests, one to gather up the Storm Drakes from Odin to our cause, and another to check in with defecting Druids of the Flame. It's also WoW's 19th anniversary, and that's good for you because it means, well, the event is back, so you can do Korak's Revenge and all of that, but also a 19% experience and reputation buff. And the real good news is that this applies to the new patch 10.2 Dream Warden's reputation. So if you're popping a bunch of those big juicy 2500 rep tokens, yeah, it'll be pretty tasty business. Also, Blizzard have upgraded the character boost gear. The level 70 boost now gives you eye level 424 gear that is not upgradable, but that basically just means you can launch straight into 10.2's content without having to worry about gear. Also though, boosted characters start with Renown level 20 with all major Dragonflight factions and 12 with the Nithin. Damn. Okay, Night Elves, you're getting your wish. The white coloration of the Heritage Armor is now available. It looks so good. And the way this works is that after completing the final chapter of the main campaign, called New Beginnings, you'll get a quest from Taronda that will give you this ensemble. So yes, I suppose even more reason to level my Night Elf Druid. Finally, for this week's News Blast then, those who planted seeds a little bit too zealously last week have been rolled back. Basically, the way it worked is there was major bugs, right? These allowed for massive exploitation. One of them had people macroing all of the rep tokens into one button, so they could basically just spam it, all while under the 100% renown buff. Now you'd think that that buff, which is the alt catch-up one, that would expire once you're beyond renown level 10. But the thing is, there was no cooldown on the tokens, so they all snapshotted the buffed value, and that is essentially the essence of one of the ways people were getting rep too fast. So yeah, point is, rollbacks have happened, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Let's talk about lore then. You've probably seen my breakdown of the raid cinematic. TLDR, the dialogue and the presentation has, I think, universally been panned, but the setup for the War Within does actually work, and I'd say the story that they're trying to tell is better than the story than they have perhaps managed to tell, because the game's in-game narrative delivery has been a little bit spotty, to say the least. But there is actually much more to 10.2's narrative, so let's just dive into that. The final chapter is only available after you defeat Farak. Now, getting Farak killed in, say, 2 nights of normal progress is fairly feasible, I would say, but for many people, this will mean waiting until the LFR unlock happens. There's certainly been discourse over that one. But what is a really welcome change here is the story is almost entirely non-combat. It's dialogue, it's cutscenes, very much the sort of thing that FF14 players will be used to. And I think that's nice, because that's just a good concluding set of quests after the main boss has been defeated. We don't need to conjure up some way to have a bunch of combat. How about we just spend time with the characters that we care about? Perfect. So there's a great celebratory feast that's taking place underneath the boughs of Amirdrassil, now that it has been brought into Azeroth. Basically is bringing people together, all those who helped us along our journey in Dragonflight. We've got wild gods, prominent night elves, centaur, dragonkin, tuskar, and faction characters. Most in attendance have got some short dialogue, but there's also some stay a while and listen scenes from the more prominent characters. And look, a lot of people don't like how this has went with the tree or what it means for the Night Elves in the setting, and yes, it does seem that, at least for now, the tree is where the Night Elves are going to be. I mean, hell, once Amirdrassil's actually born into the world, there's even like a dock that spawns that looks totally like the one at Teldrassil, so that's just the way that that's going on. I hope the Night Elves make it back to Kalimdor at some point. I think that would be important for them, and it would be a really good story to tell. So if that happens, I'm okay with this being a stepping stone. At least I have somewhere, and it does have, connections both to Elune and their druidic roots. Druid roots because obviously the Emerald Dream is everywhere, and Elune because the seed that Amirdrassil was born of does in fact come from Elune in that scene towards the end of Shadowlands. So overall then, I've got to admit that as much as it was rocky getting here, I think this chapter was really great, and I would totally encourage Blizzard to not feel like they have to bother so much with quests that are just us killing random things for little to no reason, when actually you can just have a lot of dialogue, you can have scenes, you can have conversations with characters, and actually it's a role-playing game, it's an RPG. People do like that kind of thing. So this was really welcome. And doing quests like this, more importantly, actually gives them time to have dialogue, tell their story. Maybe in a world where that is the norm, we don't have to have these weird cinematics that just have characters barking info at us. Next then, Ysera. Bit weird. Many have been left confused about what the whole point of the Ysera story was, because earlier in the expansion, Malfurion took her place in Ardenweald. This let her return to Azeroth. And since then, she kind of hasn't really done anything. I mean, in this patch, right, she gives everyone kind of her farewell before she heads back into Ardenweald. And it seems that whenever Alexstrasza says, goodbye to Ysera, that's actually the first time they've interacted in the expansion. Now, in terms of the actual lore, I'm sure they've hung out a bunch. But in terms of what players have actually seen in-game, the content that we've experienced, it's the first time they even talked to each other, and it's the goodbye. So when I talk about strange, narrative cohesion, it's stuff like that I mean. There's lots of ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are less good. Others fail because they're not committed to enough in-game, right? They're just sort of thrown into various different patches, often with quite a lot of disregard as to how that story actually exists in the game. Not the story that is in the head of the writers. I have a feeling that this is less to do with intent from the devs, but far more to do with the realities of production. Either way, I think it's something they really do have to work on. Anyhow, Ysera heads back to Ardenweald, but if you go and check in Ardenweald, Malfurion is actually still there having a big sleep. But of course, because Ysera's back, I think it would be kind of crazy if we did not get Malfurion back in the game soon. Overall, I'm just kind of left wondering why it went down like this, why they bring Ysera back and then basically do nothing with her. It just feels weird. I don't know if maybe this is some content being cut, some plans being changed. It does just kind of feel like they really tried to merge the story of Dragonflight with the recovery of the elves, but they didn't necessarily have enough time to fully develop that in-game, which, yeah, is bizarre. I have a feeling that their blistering production schedule is just that. It's relentless, and they're not going to delay a raid or a Mythic Plus season because the story needs more work, and I think that just means that narrative cohesion is the casualty, which kind of sucks because the team has proven they've been able to do great stuff Just look at the Orc Heritage Armor questline. Speaking of cohesion then, I'm actually being reminded of FF14 in a really good way by WoW. You see, in FF14, right, they would do an expansion and then a few patches of MSQ would follow up on the expansion story. They would often then move into prologue content that would sort of lead into their next expansion. And I think we're actually getting that here. Number one, Tyr will be restored in a few days. Even though right now there is a bug that makes him appear at the new Amirdrassil if you've defeated Farak, which is a little bit odd. But anyway, Tyr will be back. No doubt he'll actually have things to say that will probably drive our next few patches. So that story thread will obviously continue, but the thing I want to highlight here is a short quest line and conversation with Khadgar. He tells us of troubling reports from the Kirin Tor. So apparently, something is moving in the shadows. An ancient enemy stirs, incited by some harbinger with whom Iridikron had dark dealings. So who or what this enemy is, Khadgar cannot say, but he says he's spoken to an old friend who is going to investigate. He suspects Azeroth will need our help once more. So clearly the Harbinger is Xal'atath. I think the ancient enemy is probably the Nerubians, and when they say ancient enemy, it's probably going way, way, way back to, when they were extremely powerful back in the day. So I think right now Xal'atath is probably deep within the earth in Azj-Kahet, probably working whatever angle she has right now. Then we've got the other side of War Within, which is Azeroth, who is stirring. Now, if you caught my speculations from the cinematic video, I think they were kind of on the money, because Thrall says, when Amirdrassil took root in Azeroth for a moment, it was as if there was and then he trails off, but Jaina cuts in saying, a voice. So Thrall number one is relieved that he didn't imagine the voice, which is good. It's like, if you talk to God, that's normal. If God talks to you, maybe you kind of lost it. So that's good. Anyway, Thrall's relieved. Jaina agrees that whatever it is, it's very ancient, but they both just say, look, this is a problem for the future. We've just protected the big tree. Let's celebrate. So clearly then, what's going on, I think, is that Amirdrassil, who remember, comes from Elune and the Winter Queen, I think Amirdrassil is having an impact on Azeroth, helping perhaps rouse her from whatever sleep, or perhaps stasis that she has experienced. Because if the Titans have been locking her down with their magics all of this time, who's to say that, some life wouldn't kind of crack that? Hey, take a look at the last Titan logo. Now take a look at the stasis prisons within the Vault of the Incarnates. They do look kind of similar, don't they? Well, the lore doesn't stop, because Warcraft, Dark Souls, and many legendary CRPGs really show us the power of good flavor text. And that's where this month's trading post comes in. It's a pretty expensive month, but the overall completion reward gives you this cosmic weapon cache. We've got the Void Song Stave of the Harbinger, we've got Taysavir Sword of the Grand Design, Mythoris Dagger of the Grand Design, Citharis Broadsword of the Sunderer, which is basically a player version of Sargeras' sword, and Gorodar Darkblade of the Sunderer, which is a one-handed version of that also pays a little bit of homage to Gorobal, which I believe from the old RPGs was the canonical name of Sargeras' sword. Anyway, fantasy names, they can be fun. Now, the Titanic Blades have got this text. An edge so sharp it could be honed by Agramar himself. Any who defy the will of the Titans should beware its wielder. And shadows cannot be allowed to fester. Disorder must be struck down wherever it takes hold. True children of the Titans will heed their maker's call. Think about that one. It basically matters because it's kind of doing a no true Scotsman on the heroes of Azeroth, right? Some heroes of Azeroth, yes, may have this titanic lineage, but obviously from the events of Ulduar back in Wrath of the Lich King, where Algalon was, going to hit the reset button on the planet and kill everyone, to the events of the modern day, it's clear that the Titans primarily do care about keeping corruption down and keeping their plan going. It's just the way that they roll. Now, the Sargeras swords, they just basically talk of a dark hatred. The stave, though, is interesting because it says, a gift of Dementius, bestowed at the height of the Black Empire, those touched by shadow are drawn to its haunting whispers. I think it's interesting, it's called the Stave of the Harbinger. Could that be related to the current Harbinger Xal'atath? right? I mean, some think that Xal'atath is the remnant of what was a fifth old god that was kind of defeated by the others and, rammed into that blade. We're also beginning to think that maybe the Azerothian old gods and the more cosmic void sort of elements may not be in perfect alignment. Now, this gets relevant because Dementius is the Void Lord who is responsible for the ruination of Karesh, which is the homeworld of the Ethereals. So, if this all happened in the days of the Black Empire, maybe it suggests that Xal'atath is a little bit more allied with the Void Lords, maybe the terrestrial old gods are not as aligned. It's kind of hard to tell, but hey, remember this. The Void stuff with Ysera and Argus was really cool. All those Void Ethereals in Argus were really cool. Mixing Xal'atath in, that makes the whole thing kind of exciting. I mean, remember when N'Zoth was defeated, Ysera said she heard new voices join the chorus. I don't know, I just think all that stuff's kind of cool and fun. In a way, Dragonflight is pretty much over. I mean, Amirdrassil is at large, obviously saved for a future expansion. The stories of the other incarnates are finished. There is a possibility that Farak, given his fire infusions, was kind of spirited away to the Firelands when he was defeated. Who knows, some people think he might be the new Fire Lord or something, but again, that's just speculation. We've got the tree being solved. The Night Elves are, at the very least, I think, until the Midnight expansion, settled, it would seem, and they've tied off a lot of their loose ends. I mean, even look at the Nosdormu plotline, it was wrapped up shockingly quickly. Now, we do know that 10.2.5 will just do some epilogues for the various factions of the Isles, but basically, the main Dragonflight A plot is kind of done outside of Tyr. So, if Dragonflight is over, how come Blizzard have said there are 3 more patches? Now remember that expansion pre-patches take place on that expansion's version of WoW. So if you're saying that version 10 of WoW has got 3 more patches, that pretty much is saying 10.2.5, 10.2.7, and 10.2.9, I guess. Obviously, the only narrative left is Tyr's return. We do know that we're getting the return to Gilneas as well, but it all makes me think that in FF14 style, we'll kind of get a proper narrative lead into our next expansion, one where we actually get proper screen time setting up the war within, which I think would be really healthy for the game, and really healthy for just people's narrative engagement. Because yes, catching people up with the lore is a next to impossible job, but hey, you gotta start somewhere, so why not have the plot suddenly become more cohesive? That's my hope anyway. Obviously, time will tell, and I imagine within the next few weeks, we'll probably get some form of roadmap spelling out what 2024 looks like. Overall then, I'm having fun with the current patch. Yes, I do wish that cinematic was not lame, and I wish it was just, had dialogue that just felt a bit more natural, but that aside, things are broadly pretty damn good. Okay, that's it from me. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in. You can check out today's sponsor in the link down below, and I'll see you next time.